Can you make me come? The giant mail-order bride asked the virgin cowboy. He admitted, I. The question landed between them, heavier than the silence that followed it. The cowboy stood just inside the cabin doorway, one boot still half turned toward the night as if he might need to escape. The lantern hanging from a nail in the wall threw a soft, uneven glow, stretching shadows across the rough-hewn logs. Outside, the wind rolled low across the plains, carrying the smell of dust and distant rain. Inside, the air felt thick, crowded with things neither of them knew how to say. She was taller than he had expected when he ordered her letter from the catalog. Not just tall, but solid in a way that spoke of long days and hard work. Her shoulders were strong, her hands broad, her posture careful, as if she had learned long ago to take up as little space as possible despite her size. The long journey had left faint lines of exhaustion around her eyes. But there was something else there too. Hope, fragile and stubborn. When she asked the question, she didn't smile. She didn't tease. Her voice was steady but only just. Can you make me come? He blinked, certain he had misunderstood. His ears burned beneath the brim of his hat. No woman had ever spoken to him like that. No woman had ever spoken to him at all in that way. The town girls looked through him, not at him. He was the quiet ranch hand. The one who kept his head down, saved his money and dreamed in private. His throat tightened. He cleared it and tried again. I don't rightly know what you mean. She shifted her weight, boots creaking softly on the wooden floor. I don't mean it the way men brag about, she said quickly, as if afraid he might think less of her. I mean, can you make me feel chosen? Like I belong here, like I'm not just someone you sent for because you needed help around the place. That was when he understood, and somehow that frightened him even more. He closed the door behind him, slow and careful, the latch clicking into place like a decision. He took off his hat and held it in both hands, turning it over and over as though the answers might be written inside the worn leather. I've never had a wife, he said. Never even had a sweetheart. I don't know how to be what you're asking for. She studied him, really studied him, her dark eyes moving from his nervous hands to his face, flushed and open in a way most men tried to hide. For a long moment she said nothing, and the silence stretched thin. Then she let out a breath she might have been holding for years. Good, she said softly. Then you won't pretend. He looked up, surprised.
I've been around men who pretended, she continued.
Men who talked big and saw me as something to conquer or something to mock. I don't need someone who knows all the answers. I just need someone who's willing to listen. She stepped farther into the cabin, setting her small travel bag down by the wall. The sound was gentle, final. She wasn't leaving. He gestured awkwardly toward the small table and the single chair. You can sit? He offered, then immediately felt foolish. Of course she could sit. She wasn't a guest passing through. She was something else, something new. Instead of sitting, she moved closer, stopping a careful distance away. You don't have to be afraid of me, she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. I know I look like I could break you in half. A nervous laugh escaped him before he could stop it. I ain't afraid of that, he admitted. I'm afraid I won't be enough. That made her eyes soften. I crossed an ocean because I was tired of being nothing, she said. Where I come from, people looked at me and only saw what I wasn't. Small enough, quiet enough, desirable enough. When I read your letter, you didn't talk about what you wanted from a wife. You talked about the land, the sky, how lonely it gets when the sun goes down and there's no one to tell about your day. He nodded slowly. I figured honesty was better than selling dreams. She smiled then. A real smile this time, and it changed the whole room. That's why I'm here. They stood there, close enough now that he could feel the warmth of her, the faint scent of soap and road dust. His heart beat so loud he was sure she could hear it. I don't know how to make promises like that, he said quietly. But I can promise I won't lie to you. She reached out, hesitated, then gently placed her hand over his. Her palm was warm, steady. Bigger than his, yes, but careful, as if she understood how fragile this moment was. That's all I'm asking, she said. He swallowed and laced his fingers with hers. Surprised at how natural it felt once he did, the world didn't crack open. Nothing dramatic happened, but something settled into place like a knot finally loosening. They moved to sit on the edge of the narrow bed, leaving a respectful space between them at first. The mattress dipped slightly under their combined weight, a reminder that this was real, not a story in a catalog. She looked down at their joined hands. "When I asked you that question," she said, "I wasn't trying to scare you." "You did," he admitted, then smiled shyly. "But I reckon that's all right." She laughed softly, the sound low and genuine. "We can be scared together then." The lantern flickered, and outside the wind shifted. He realized that for the first time in years, he didn't feel the familiar ache of loneliness pressing in at night. There was uncertainty, yes, fear too, but there was also something else, possibility. He squeezed her hand just once as if to test whether it was allowed. She squeezed back. And in that simple exchange, the question she had asked began to answer itself. The rain began as a whisper, a soft tapping against the roof that almost blended with the crackle of the lantern flame. The sound wrapped around the cabin, sealing them inside a world that felt smaller and safer than the wide, empty plains beyond the walls. The cowboy noticed it first, how the night no longer felt like something waiting to swallow him whole. It felt like cover. He stood up from the bed slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile understanding had settled between them. "I should make some tea," he said, grasping for something ordinary, something he knew how to do. "Helps when the weather turns." She nodded, grateful for the pause, for the chance to breathe. Watching him move about the cabin, she saw how deliberate he was, how careful with every motion. There was no swagger in him, no practiced confidence. Everything he did was honest, even his uncertainty. She shrugged off her coat and hung it on the peg by the door. Without it, she seemed even taller, her presence filling the small space. She waited for him to flinch or look away. He didn't. He glanced up, met her eyes, then looked back to the kettle. Cheeks pink but expression steady. "You can sit closer to the stove," he offered. "It throws more heat." She did, settling onto the stool near the iron belly of it, holding her hands out to warm them. He poured the water, the simple domestic sound grounding them both. When he handed her the cup, their fingers brushed, and this time neither of them pulled away. "Thank you," she said, wrapping both hands around the chipped mug. They drank in silence for a while, listening to the rain grow heavier, the rhythm soothing. The lantern light softened the edges of the room, turning the rough logs into something almost gentle. The cowboy finally spoke, his voice quieter than before. "I've been thinking about what you asked," he said. "About feeling wanted." She looked up at him, attentive but not pressing. He took a breath. "I don't have fancy words," he went on. "But when I saw you step down from that wagon today, I felt steady, like the ground stopped shifting under my feet." Her eyes widened slightly. "That's how I felt too," she admitted. "Like I had finally arrived somewhere that might let me stay." He set his mug down and moved closer, lowering himself to sit on the floor near her stool so they were at the same height. It was an instinctive choice, one that didn't go unnoticed. "You don't have to make yourself smaller here," he said. "I won't ask that of you." Something in her expression cracked then, a tightness around the mouth she had probably learned to wear long ago. She reached out and rested her hand on his shoulder. Not heavy, not hesitant, just there. "No one's ever said that to me," she whispered. He placed his hand over hers, anchoring it. "Then I'm glad I did." The rain intensified, drumming hard now, and thunder rolled far off. Not threatening, just present. The cabin felt warmer, closer. He stood and offered his hand, palm up. "Would you—" He stopped, swallowed, then tried again. "Would you like to lie down? Just to rest? Long journey and all." She studied his face, searching for expectation, for demand. Finding none, she nodded. "I'd like that." They lay on the bed side by side, fully clothed. A careful space between them at first. The mattress dipped again, more noticeably this time, but it didn't feel unstable. It felt shared. He stared up at the ceiling, aware of every inch of distance and every possibility that distance held. After a moment, she turned onto her side to face him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You already know the answer's yes," he replied, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "Why did you choose me?" she asked. "From all those names and descriptions." He turned toward her, propping himself on his elbow. "Your letter," he said simply. "You wrote about strength like it was something quiet, like it didn't need to shout." She laughed softly. "I didn't think anyone would notice that." "I did," he said, "because that's how I am too." The space between them closed naturally then, not as a decision but as a drift. Their arms brushed, then rested together. She sighed, a sound of relief rather than desire, and rested her forehead against his shoulder. He stiffened for half a second, then relaxed, letting the weight of her settle. He wrapped an arm around her carefully, checking with his body language if it was all right. She responded by shifting closer, fitting against him in a way that surprised them both with how right it felt. "You don't have to do anything," she murmured. "Just stay." "I can do that," he said, meaning it. They lay there listening to the rain, the thunder growing nearer and then passing by. His heartbeat slowed as he grew accustomed to her presence. Hers did too. The steady rise and fall against his side, calming in a way she hadn't known she needed. After a while she spoke again, her voice drowsy. "When I asked you if you could make me come," she said, "I was afraid you'd think I was asking for something impossible." He smiled into the dim light. "I thought you were asking for something I didn't know how to give." "And now?" she asked. "And now I think," he said slowly, choosing his words with care, "that it's not about knowing how. It's about being willing to learn each other." She lifted her head slightly, looking at him, her expression soft. "That's more than enough for me." He brushed a loose strand of hair away from her face, tentative at first, then more confident when she leaned into the touch. There was no rush, no hunger that demanded satisfaction. What filled the space between them was something quieter and deeper, a sense of being seen without being measured. Her eyes closed as she settled back against him. "I don't feel alone right now," she said, almost to herself. "Neither do I," he replied. The rain eased, leaving only the occasional drip from the eaves. The lantern flickered lower, casting long, slow shadows. Wrapped together in the stillness, they drifted toward sleep, not as strangers bound by necessity, but as two people who had found, in the most unexpected way, a place to belong.